I forgive you, but trust is earned, and I can never walk backward.
Husband divorced his grieving wife after her mother's funeral. Unaware she inherited a $30 million estate, he divorced her while her black dress still smelled of rain and funeral flowers. While the dirt on her mother's grave was still fresh, Logan Keller stood before Ava with divorce papers in hand, cold, unblinking, heartless. "Sign it, Ava," he said flatly. "I can't keep living in this darkness. You've turned this house into a tomb." His words sliced through her like the wind that had howled at the cemetery. Just behind him, Serena Finch, her supposed friend, stood with folded arms, feigning pity, but hiding a satisfied smirk. She had been helping Logan cope, visiting every day since the funeral. And now, she didn't bother to look away as he slid the pen across the table. Ava's fingers trembled. The silver bracelet her late mother gave her dangled loosely from her wrist. The last memory she had left. "Logan, this is my mother's 7th day," she whispered, tears spilling. But he didn't flinch. He only sighed, already glancing toward Serena. That was the moment Ava realized grief had made her invisible to the man she once called her home. The man who vowed to stand beside her through death had turned into a stranger before the candles at the memorial could even burn out. He thought her brokenness made her worthless. He thought walking away meant freedom. But what he didn't know was that the same woman he cast aside in sorrow was the sole heir to a $30 million estate. Her mother's last act of love, waiting quietly in the hands of a lawyer who would soon change everything. Sometimes the wife you abandon beside a coffin becomes a storm that sweeps away your pride. Sometimes the tears you mock become the fire that lights her rise. This isn't just another story of betrayal. It's the cry of a grieving heart turned unbreakable, the silence that hides strength, and the warning the world forgets too easily. Never mistake mourning for weakness, because from ashes, queens rise. Dear family, as we step into this story, I ask from the heart, don't just hear her pain and scroll away. Subscribe now and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. So Ava and every woman who has ever been abandoned in her sorrow knows she's not alone. The rain poured harder as the priest whispered the last prayer. Thunder rolled above the cemetery like a warning from heaven. Ava Williams stood beside the coffin, her black veil clinging to her face, her fingers gripping a single white lily. The casket holding her mother sank slowly into the ground, taking with it the last piece of her heart. "Rest now, Mom," she whispered, voice trembling. But Logan, her husband, shifted impatiently beside her. His eyes darted toward his watch, his shoulders tense under his black coat. "We've been here for hours," he muttered. "It's just a funeral, Av. You need to move on." The words struck her like a slap. She turned to him in disbelief. "Just a funeral?" she echoed, her voice breaking. "It's my mother's burial, Logan. My only family." Behind them, a woman in a dark gray dress stepped closer. Serena Finch, Ava's childhood friend. Her makeup was perfect, even in the rain. She reached for Logan's arm, pretending to steady him. "She's just hurting, Logan," Serena said softly, eyes flicking toward Ava with quiet pity. "Grief makes people say things." Ava's breath caught. Serena, her friend, had been spending too much time around Logan lately, always helping, always whispering comfort that sounded too close. From across the grave, Arthur Keller, Logan's father, shook his head with cold disapproval. "Your wife has become a shadow, son," he said under his breath. "You can't let her drown you, too." But Ava heard him. The words sank deeper than the coffin itself. A shadow, a burden, That was what she had become in their eyes. She fell to her knees beside the grave, clutching her mother's silver bracelet so tightly it cut into her palm. Her sobs mixed with the rain around her. Umbrellas shifted, guests looked away, and even the priest hesitated before walking off. Logan sighed loudly. "Let's go," he said. "Standing here won't bring her back." Ava lifted her tear-streaked face. "You can leave if you want, Logan," she said quietly, "but I'll stay with her a little longer." He turned away without another word, and when he did, Serena followed, her heels sinking slightly into the wet ground as she tucked her hand around his arm. Ava's world blurred. The man who promised to love her through sorrow was walking away before the grave was even covered. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her mind. "When people show you who they are, believe them." She stood there long after the others had gone, rain dripping from her veil, her body trembling from grief and disbelief. The earth was still open, and so was her wound. As the last car left the cemetery, lightning cracked the sky, and for a split second, Ava thought she saw Serena looking back through the car window, smiling, and deep in her heart, something shifted. The warmth of love began to die, replaced by a silence that would soon become strength. The slamming of the mansion door echoed through the hall like thunder. Ava flinched. The sound reminded her of the coffin lid closing. She stood in the doorway, still in her black dress, raindrops dripping from her hair onto the marble floor. Logan's voice thundered from the living room. "For God's sake, Av, take that dress off! You look like death itself walking around my house." She turned slowly, her face pale. "It's been 3 days since the funeral, Logan," she said softly. "I'm still grieving." He scoffed, tossing his car keys onto the table. "Grieving doesn't mean drowning everyone in sorrow. My father's right. You need to stop living in the past." Arthur Keller, tall and silver-haired, sat in the corner, sipping his drink like a judge, waiting for a verdict. His cold eyes met hers. "Your mother was a good woman," he said flatly, "but Logan needs stability. You can't keep him chained to your tears." Ava swallowed hard. "Stability," she whispered. "You mean pretending nothing happened?" Logan rolled his eyes. "Serena came by today," he said. "She asked how you're doing. Maybe you should talk to her instead of crying into your pillow." The name cut deeper than he realized. Serena, her friend, the woman who had stood beside her at the grave, pretending to care. Ava's chest tightened. "She's been here again?" Ava asked quietly. Logan shrugged. "She's been supportive, unlike you. She understands what it means to move on." For a moment, silence filled the room, thick and heavy. The fireplace hissed softly. Ava stared at her husband, wondering how grief could make him a stranger so quickly. She spoke carefully. "You're calling my mourning weakness, but you didn't even shed a tear at the funeral." Logan slammed his glass on the table. "Because someone has to stay strong. Not everyone enjoys being pitied." Her eyes shimmered. "Strong doesn't mean cold, Logan." Arthur rose, setting down his glass. "Enough," he snapped. "You two are embarrassing this family. Son, have Serena accompany you to the gala tomorrow. She's respectable, elegant, not like this chaos." Ava's breath caught. The gala, so soon, so easily. Logan didn't argue. He simply nodded. "Maybe that's what I'll do." That night, Ava sat alone on the edge of their bed, clutching her mother's silver bracelet. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of rain outside. She thought about the vows he once whispered, for better, for worse. But she realized he meant only the better. Her reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Hollow, forgotten, disposable, she whispered to herself. Maybe grief isn't the only thing ending here. Downstairs, the sound of a woman's laughter echoed faintly through the hallway. Serena's voice. Ava froze. Her eyes widened. She stood up suddenly, her bracelet slipping from her hand onto the floor with a sharp metallic clink. Her world was about to change again. The sound of paper hitting the table was louder than thunder. Ava flinched as a stack of documents slid across the polished surface toward her. Her hands trembled before she even looked down. "Sign them," Logan said coldly. He stood tall, dressed sharply, eyes void of warmth. "It's a divorce. It's better for both of us." For a long moment, Ava couldn't speak. Her lips quivered, her eyes red from sleepless nights. "You're serious," she whispered. Serena Finch stood near the doorway, pretending to avoid their eyes. She wore a silk blouse and faint perfume that didn't belong in a married woman's home. "Logan," she said softly, "maybe this isn't the right moment." He didn't turn to her. "It's the perfect moment," he said. "She's been living like a ghost. I need to live again." The words shattered what was left of Ava's strength. She reached for the papers with shaking fingers. The title blurred through her tears. "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." Her voice broke. "My mother's grave is still fresh, Logan. How can you do this now?" He crossed his arms. "Your grief isn't an excuse for neglect. I can't keep watching you cry over someone who's gone." She looked up at him, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You promised to stand by me in everything." He laughed bitterly. "That was before you stopped being a wife." The room fell silent. The clock ticked slowly, cruelly. Ava's breathing quickened as her eyes met Serena's. For a second, she saw guilt flicker across Serena's face, then vanish behind a calm, practiced smile. Arthur entered from the hall, his presence colder than the marble floor. "It's for the best," he said, glancing at Logan. "You can't build a future with a woman who lives in the past." Ava stood, gripping the table edge for balance. "A woman who lives in the past?" she repeated, her voice rising. "You mean a woman who just buried her mother, who gave her everything to your son." Arthur's expression didn't change. "You'll thank us one day." Serena placed a gentle hand on Logan's shoulder. "Let's go. She needs space." That small touch, that single motion was enough. Ava saw it clearly now. The closeness, the comfort, the betrayal that had been blooming right under her roof. "You can have each other," Ava said quietly, tears falling freely. "But one day the truth will visit both of you, and you won't be ready." Logan turned away, grabbing his keys. "I already am." The door slammed behind. Ava sank to her knees, sobbing, clutching her silver bracelet until her palm bled. "Mom," she whispered, "I have no one left." Lightning flashed outside. In its glow, a shadow appeared. The kind face of an older woman at the gate, holding an umbrella. Vivian Hayes, the caretaker next door, was watching quietly. And in that quiet gaze, Ava's next chapter was waiting to begin. The sky broke open in a storm that night. Rain slammed against the roof like it was trying to drown the world. Ava stumbled down the driveway, her black dress soaked, her bare feet splashing through puddles. The silver bracelet slipped from her hand, but she didn't stop to pick it up. "Why, Logan?" she cried into the rain. "Why now?" Her voice vanished in the thunder. Lightning flashed across the dark clouds, lighting up her face, tear-streaked. She walked with no umbrella, no destination, just pain leading her steps. Her body trembled as wind whipped through the empty streets. Cars passed without slowing. She clutched her chest, her breath shallow. "Mom," she whispered, "I wish you could tell me what to do." Then her knees buckled. The world spun. The last thing she saw was the glow of a porch light in the distance before everything went dark. Moments later, a door creaked open. An older woman gasped. "Oh dear Lord, child, are you okay?" Vivian Hayes, her neighbor, a retired nurse and caretaker, ran through the rain toward her. She had warm brown eyes and a voice that carried both strength and comfort. She knelt beside Ava, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "Stay with me, sweetheart," Vivian whispered, lifting her carefully. "You're freezing." Ava faintly opened her eyes. I have nowhere to go," she murmured. Vivian tightened her grip. "You do now." Inside Vivian's cottage, the light was soft and golden. She wrapped Ava in a thick blanket and placed her near the fireplace. The scent of tea and old wood filled the air. A kettle whistled gently on the stove. Ava shivered, whispering, "He left me. He left me after the funeral." Vivian's heart ached. "Then you let him go," she said simply. "People who abandon you in the storm don't deserve a seat when the sun returns." Ava's eyes filled again. "But I have nothing left. No family, no home, not even strength." Vivian sat beside her and squeezed her hand. "You still have your heart," she said softly. "It just needs time to heal. You'll see. Sometimes broken things are just waiting to become stronger." The fire crackled, filling the silence with gentle warmth. Ava leaned back, exhausted, her head resting on the couch cushion. For the first time in days, her breathing slowed. Outside, the rain began to ease. The storm was ending. But inside, something new was beginning. Vivian looked at her kindly. "Rest, Av. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next." As Ava drifted into sleep, her fingers found the corner of the blanket and brushed against something cold and familiar. Vivian had found the silver bracelet in the mud and cleaned it. It now rested on the table beside her, and somewhere in the quiet, unseen, a car slowed in front of the house. Logan's car. He didn't step out, but his eyes lingered on the light in Vivian's window before driving off into the darkness. He had no idea that the woman he cast away had just found the person who would help her rise again. Ava woke up screaming. "Mom!" she cried, sitting up in panic. Her heart raced as her eyes darted around the unfamiliar room. Warm lights, floral curtains, a faint smell of tea. It took a moment before she realized where she was. Vivian Hayes' home, the place she'd been brought to after collapsing in the storm. Vivian rushed in holding a cup of tea. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now." Tears streamed down Ava's cheeks. "I dreamed of her again," she whispered. "She was calling me from the grave. I couldn't reach her." Vivian set the cup down and gently held her shoulders. "That's not her calling you from the grave," she said softly. "That's her telling you to stand up again." Ava buried her face in her hands, her voice trembling. "But I don't know how. I don't even know." Kai Jensen, a compassionate therapist in his 40s, with gentle eyes behind silver-framed glasses. He greeted Ava warmly. "You've lost a lot, haven't you?" Ava nodded weakly. "Everything that made sense." Dr. Jensen leaned forward. "Grief can feel like drowning, Av. But sometimes healing begins when you stop fighting the water and let yourself float." She looked at him, silent but listening. His words didn't erase the pain, but they reached the part of her heart that still wanted to live. After the session, Vivian smiled. "I told you you're not alone in this anymore." Days turned into quiet weeks. Ava began to eat again, help Vivian with cooking, and take slow morning walks. The color in her face slowly returned. One sunny morning, the doorbell rang. Vivian opened it to find two women standing politely at the porch. Zara Vance, a confident lawyer in her 30s with sharp eyes and a briefcase, and Chloe Flynn, a young intern with a notebook clutched nervously in her hands. "Mrs. Ava Williams," Zara asked kindly, "we represent the estate of your late mother, Mrs. Eliza Holt." Ava froze. "My mother's estate?" Zara nodded. "She left instructions for us to reach you only after her funeral. We've been looking for you." Vivian stepped aside as they entered, sensing something important was unfolding. Ava's fingers tightened around her teacup. "What? What instructions?" Zara smiled gently, but didn't answer. "You'll want to see this in person. Your mother's last letter is sealed at our office to be opened by you alone." The words hit like lightning. Ava's heart pounded. "Her last letter," she whispered. Zara nodded. "Yes, and it comes with significant documents." Vivian and Chloe exchanged glances. Something big was coming. Ava looked out the window, where rain clouds began to gather again over the quiet street. She didn't know it yet, but her mother's voice was about to speak once more through ink, through will, and through a secret worth $30 million. The office was silent, except for the ticking of a small clock on the wall. Ava sat across from Zara Vance, her hands clasped tightly on her lap. The sealed envelope lay on the table between them, thick, aged, stamped with red wax. The handwriting on the front made Ava's breath catch. It was her mother's, Eliza Holt. "That's her handwriting," Ava whispered. "She used to write my birthday notes that way." Zara nodded respectfully. "Your mother prepared this with great care. She wanted it delivered only when you were ready to start over." Chloe Flynn, the young intern, stood nearby, holding a folder filled with legal documents. Her wide eyes flickered between them nervously, aware this was no ordinary will. Ava's fingers trembled as Zara slid the envelope toward her. "Are you sure?" Zara asked gently. Ava nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I've been afraid of losing her voice forever. Maybe this is her way of speaking to me one last time." With a deep breath, Ava broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter written in her mother's elegant hand. She opened it slowly, and as she began to read, her lips quivered. "My dearest Av, if you're reading this, I am gone, but not far. You were my greatest joy, and I never wanted grief to chain you. I know your heart is kind, but the world can be cruel. That is why I have left you the strength to stand, even when love fails you." Ava's tears fell onto the paper. Her voice shook as she continued. "Your Aunt Eleanor Vance will guide you through what I've prepared. Trust her. She knows everything. Use what I've left not for revenge, but for rebuilding. You are worth more than sorrow." A knock on the door interrupted her sobs. Zara looked up as the door opened, and there stood Aunt Eleanor Vance, a tall woman in her 60s, elegant in a deep blue coat, her silver hair tied neatly back. "Aunt Eleanor," Ava whispered. She hadn't seen her in years, not since a family argument long before her mother's illness. Eleanor stepped forward, her eyes soft but resolute. "Your mother made me promise to stay away until this moment," she said gently, "because she knew you'd only be ready when you'd been broken enough to rebuild." She placed a new document in front of Ava. "This is the legal will. Eliza Holt left you her entire estate, valued at $30 million. The properties, the trust, everything." The room went still. Chloe gasped softly. Zara watched Ava's reaction closely. Ava covered her mouth. $30 million. Eleanor nodded. "Under one condition, you must remain independent. Not a single cent can go to your husband, Logan Keller." Ava's heart stopped. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the table. "She knew," she whispered. "She knew what he was." Eleanor nodded again. "Mothers always do." Lightning flashed outside the office window as rain began to fall, just like the night Ava was cast out. But this time, she wasn't trembling. She was awakening. Her mother hadn't just left her money. She had left her purpose. And as Zara began preparing the next documents, Ava looked out into the storm with steady eyes. "Logan can never know," Zara said quietly. "Not yet," Ava's voice was calm. "He won't." But somewhere across town, in a candle-lit restaurant, Serena Finch was smiling, whispering something into Logan's ear about an old rumor of Eliza Holt's hidden fortune. The conference room lights glowed bright and cold. Papers rustled, laptops hummed softly. Ava sat between Zara Vance and Aunt Eleanor, her hands clasped tightly. The weight of $30 million felt heavier than any grief she had ever known. "We must move fast," Zara said firmly. "Logan Keller cannot know about this inheritance." Not even a whisper. Ava looked up, her voice quiet but certain. "He'll come if he sends his money. He always does." Eleanor nodded solemnly. "That's why your mother planned for secrecy. Everything must go into a private trust under your name only. Zara will execute it." Zara opened a folder filled with legal papers. "We'll call it the Eliza Legacy Fund. It will appear as a charitable fund. Nothing Logan could trace to your name. He'd never suspect a grieving widow to own one." Chloe, sitting beside her, scribbled notes nervously. "And I'll make sure the property titles transfer quietly. No publicity, no leaks." The atmosphere pulsed with intensity. Every word felt like a secret carved into stone. Ava's heart raced as she signed each document. Each signature was a quiet declaration that she would never be powerless again. Then Zara paused. "There's one more thing," she said, her eyes meeting Ava's. "You'll need to change banks immediately. Logan still has access to your old joint account." Ava's jaw clenched. "He took my heart. I won't let him take my future." Eleanor smiled faintly. "That's my girl." When the last page was signed, the mood shifted. Ava leaned back, breathing deeply. For the first time since her mother's funeral, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a survivor, learning how to rebuild. Zara gathered the documents carefully. "From today, your fortune is secure, but you must remain silent. Pretend you're struggling. Let him believe you're still lost." Ava nodded, her expression calm but steely. "He left me in the rain. Let him think I drowned." Chloe looked up, admiration shining in her eyes. "You're stronger than you think, Av." But before peace could settle, Eleanor's phone buzzed on the table. She frowned, answering softly. "Yes, what?" Her face went pale. "Someone's been asking about the Holt estate." Everyone froze. Zara's head snapped up. "Who?" Eleanor lowered her voice. "A woman named Serena Finch said she's helping a client verify family assets." Ava's breath caught. Serena, Logan's mistress. The betrayal still burned like salt in a wound. Zara stood instantly. "Then it begins. We move everything by tomorrow morning. Chloe, file the second trust immediately. Av, go nowhere public for now." Ava's voice was calm, but laced with fire. "Let them look. They'll find nothing but the ashes they left behind." As they hurried out, thunder rolled outside again. Rain streaked across the glass walls, echoing the storm she once cried under. But now the storm belonged to her. She turned to Zara. "They think I'm still broken. Let's keep it that way." Outside the same night, Serena sat across from Logan in a candle-lit restaurant, whispering. I think her mother left something huge behind. Logan's fork froze midair. "How huge?" Serena smiled thinly. enough to make her worth chasing again. The garden shovel slipped from Ava's trembling hands and hit the soil with a dull thud. She fell to her knees, panting, tears blurring her vision. "Why can't I just stop shaking?" she whispered, pressing her palms against the earth. "Why can't I be normal again?" Vivian hurried out from the porch, apron still tied, worry etched across her face. "Av, slow down, child. You've been working since sunrise." "I need to keep moving," Ava said, her voice cracking. "If I stop, I'll think. And if I think, I'll break." Vivian knelt beside her and lifted her chin gently. "Breaking isn't the same as ending, sweetheart. Sometimes it's how strength begins." Ava's shoulders trembled as she buried her face into Vivian's arms. "I don't know how to live without her, without him." Vivian stroked her hair softly. "You don't live without them, Av. You live because of what they taught you." Later that afternoon, Chloe arrived with a small basket of groceries. Her cheerful energy always filled the house with light. "I brought vegetables and something special." She handed Ava a small notebook. "Dr. Jensen said journaling helps you find your center again." Ava smiled faintly. "He never gives up, does he?" "He believes in you," Chloe said. "We all do." Ava opened the notebook. On the first page, Chloe had written a single line. "You are not what they left behind. You are what you choose to become." Something shifted in Ava's chest, a quiet spark. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than pain. The next day, Ava began to follow a quiet routine. Morning walks, cooking lessons with Vivian, weekly therapy with Dr. Jensen. Each day was a small battle, but each victory mattered. One afternoon, as she volunteered at a local community kitchen, a little girl handed her a handmade thank you card. The crayon drawing showed a smiling woman under the sun. "That's you," the child said. "You helped my mom when she was sad." Ava smiled through tears. She finally understood. She didn't need revenge to heal. She needed purpose. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the world gold, she sat by the window writing her first journal entry. "Today, I smiled again. Not because the pain is gone, but because I know I can live through it." Vivian peeked in. "You're glowing again, Av. Your mother would be proud." Ava looked at the silver bracelet resting on her wrist. "She's here," she said softly. "Every time I breathe, she's here." But just as peace began to settle, Chloe rushed in holding her phone. "Av, you need to see this." On the screen was a headline: "Businessman Logan Keller and socialite Serena Finch debut at luxury gala. Sources say wedding soon." Ava stared silently at the photo. Logan smiling, Serena's hand on his chest. Her chest tightened, but her eyes didn't fill with tears this time. They filled with resolve. Vivian whispered, "What will you do?" Ava closed the notebook and stood up slowly. "He buried me in grief. Now he'll see who rose from it." Camera flashes burst like lightning as Logan Keller stepped out of his black limousine, Serena Finch on his arm. The marble steps of the gala shimmered beneath the golden lights. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. "Mr. Keller, how does it feel to move on so soon after your divorce?" Logan straightened his tie, flashing a polished grin. "Life doesn't stop for sorrow," he said coolly. "I believe in celebrating new beginnings." Serena squeezed his arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "We're just enjoying happiness," she added sweetly, though her smile lingered too long for comfort. The cameras loved them, but behind every flash, a whisper followed. Didn't his ex-wife just lose her mother? Too soon, too proud. Inside the ballroom, music swelled. Logan walked among investors, shaking hands, boasting about expansion plans. "My new partner understands vision," he said loudly, eyes flicking toward Serena. "She's been a great influence." Serena giggled softly, though her gaze kept drifting toward the other businessmen, especially Julian Price, the quiet silver-haired investor standing near the bar. He was the kind of man who didn't speak often, but when he did, rooms fell silent. Julian watched Logan closely, his expression unreadable. "You speak of vision," he said calmly when Logan approached, "but sometimes pride blinds us before failure." Julian raised his glass slightly. "Then buy a new one." He walked away, leaving Logan's smile frozen for a moment. Serena leaned closer, whispering, "Don't let him get to you. He's just jealous." But Logan's jaw tightened. "No one warns me about business, especially not him." Later that night, as champagne flowed and cameras flashed, Serena basked in attention. She loved the way people looked at her, the envy, the admiration. She whispered to Logan, "Do you think your ex-wife is watching this?" Logan smirked. "If she is, I hope she finally sees what she lost." What he didn't know was that miles away in Vivian Hayes's living room, Ava was watching, not out of pain, but clarity. The same reporters who glorified Logan had exposed something else, the cracks in his business empire. Dr. Jensen's voice echoed in her memory from therapy. "The ones who mock others' grief often end up begging mercy from it." At the gala, Julian approached Serena as Logan was distracted by reporters. "You enjoy luxury," he said with a faint smile. "Perhaps we can talk about a partnership, one that might make you richer than him." Serena's eyes flickered. "What kind of partnership?" Julian's smile deepened. "The kind that ends arrogance." As the orchestra swelled and applause filled the hall, Logan raised a toast. "To new love, new success, and a life without weakness." The crowd clapped, but Julian's gaze stayed fixed, cold, calculating. He saw what others didn't. The man's empire was built on ego, not wisdom. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly, a storm gathering somewhere unseen. Serena leaned close, whispering, "You're unstoppable, Logan." But his reflection in the mirror behind her told another story, one of a man too proud to see the fall, waiting in his own shadow. The hotel suite door slammed behind Serena Finch as she tossed her purse onto the couch. Her heels clicked angrily across the marble floor. "Who does he think he is?" she hissed. "Logan talks about me like I'm just decoration." A deep voice replied from the balcony, "Because that's all he can see, Serena." Julian Price stepped out of the shadows holding a glass of whiskey. His calmness was unnerving, like a man who always knew the ending before the story began. "He's blinded by his own reflection," Julian said. "But you see the cracks." Serena folded her arms, her anger cooling into curiosity. "And what do you see, Julian?" "I see opportunity," he said smoothly. "His company's stock is slipping. He's ignoring investors." "He trusts the wrong people, especially you," Serena smirked. "Oh, he trusts me too much. That's his mistake." Julian stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time you help him make a bigger one." The tension in the room thickened. Serena stared at him, uncertain if she should be afraid or intrigued. "You're suggesting." He smiled faintly. "Information, Serena. The kind that opens vaults and closes empires." For a moment, the room felt quiet, except for the soft hum of the city below. Serena's mind raced. She remembered how Logan bragged about his unshakable empire, how he paraded her like a trophy. A man like that deserved to fall. But deep inside, a flicker of fear stirred. She had seen what he did to Ava when she was no longer useful. Julian noticed her hesitation. "Don't worry," he said, setting the glass down. "You won't be the one to fall. I'll handle the exposure. You'll simply guide me." Serena turned toward the city lights. Her reflection glowed faintly in the glass. "And what do I get?" He poured another drink. "Freedom and wealth, more than Logan could ever offer you." She smiled slowly, her greed swallowing her doubts. "Then we have a deal." Julian extended his hand, and she took it, sealing an alliance born from pride and betrayal. Later that night, Serena sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. Logan's messages flashed. "Where are you? Dinner's ready. Don't keep me waiting again." She typed back one word, busy. Her reflection in the mirror was calm, almost regal. For the first time, she didn't feel like Logan's accessory. She felt like power itself. Meanwhile, across the city, Logan celebrated a new contract, unaware that the documents Julian had slipped through his assistant's hands contained a poison clause that would soon bleed his empire dry. And far from the noise, Ava sat by her window under the same night sky, writing in her journal. "Some people chase gold and lose peace. I'm learning peace creates gold on its own." As she closed her notebook, a strange feeling pricked her heart, like a storm she couldn't see, but could somehow sense. In another part of town, Serena was slipping Logan's business key card into Julian's hand. "Just don't leave traces," she whispered. Julian's eyes glinted. "I never do." The knock on the door came like thunder. 3 hard, impatient raps that shattered the quiet of Vivian Hayes's home. Vivian looked up from her knitting, startled. Who could that be at this hour? Before Ava could answer, the door burst open. Logan Keller stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat, eyes wild with something between guilt and desperation. "Av," he said breathlessly, "we need to talk." The room went cold. Ava froze where she stood, a teacup trembling in her hand. Chloe, who had been helping with the evening dishes, moved instinctively between them. Vivian's voice was sharp. "You don't barge into people's homes, Mr. Keller. This is not your house." Logan ignored her, his gaze locked on Ava. "Please, just 5 minutes," he said, forcing a shaky smile. "You look different. Better." Ava set down her cup carefully. "What do you want, Logan?" He laughed softly, pretending charm. "You know me better than that." He glanced around the cozy living room. The floral curtains, the calm air, the peace he once took for granted. "I was nearby. Thought I'd check on you." "It's been months." Vivian folded her arms. "And now your conscience decided to wake up?" Logan shot her a look, then turned back to Ava. "I made mistakes," he said. "I shouldn't have left the way I did. I was under pressure. My father, the company, everything." Ava's quiet voice cut through the room like glass. "Alone. Logan, you came here not for forgiveness, but for money." The mask slipped. His voice hardened. "Don't twist my words. I thought maybe you'd remember the good years before you turned cold." Chloe stepped closer. "Before you divorced her after a funeral, you mean?" Logan's jaw clenched. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything." Ava stood, her expression steady. "Yes, I do, but I didn't destroy people on my way down." He looked at her for a long moment, realizing the woman before him was no longer the fragile wife he once broke. She was calm, dignified, untouchable. "Logan," she said softly, "you taught me one lesson. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself, and I have." He opened his mouth to reply, but Vivian was already by the door. "Time's up." Logan hesitated, anger flickering beneath his forced politeness. "You'll regret this, Av," he said, stepping out into the rain. She watched him go, her voice quiet but firm. Not this time. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating a black car parked across the street. Inside sat a familiar silhouette, Julian Price, watching. He made a note on his tablet. "The audit begins tomorrow," he murmured. "Run it again," Zara Vance ordered, her voice sharp as the hum of the office computers filled the air. The city skyline glowed outside her glass windows, but her attention was fixed on the spreadsheets before her. Finn Carter, a seasoned forensic accountant with a calm, methodical air, adjusted his glasses. "I've run it 3 times already," he said, scrolling through the data. "The numbers don't lie. Logan Keller has been moving funds through fake charity accounts." Mia Stone, his young assistant, leaned closer, her eyes wide. "He even used Ava's old foundation name, the Whole Family Relief Fund. It's like he wanted to mock her." Zara's expression hardened. No, he wanted to erase her legacy and steal her mother's goodwill. Typical. Finn tapped a highlighted line on the monitor. "Here, $2 million wired to an offshore account under a shell company." Guess who signed the transfer? Zara read the signature slowly, her jaw tightening. Serena Finch. Mia frowned. "The mistress." "The co-conspirator," Zara corrected. They thought grief would make Ava blind, but they didn't realize who was watching. Meanwhile, in Vivian Hayes's home, Ava sat at the window holding a cup of tea. The rain had returned, gentle this time. Vivian joined her quietly. "You've been thinking about him again," Vivian said softly. Ava didn't deny it. "Part of me still wonders if he'll ever feel sorry. The rest of me hopes he never does, because I've learned to stop waiting for his remorse." Vivian smiled faintly. "That's strength, dear. Not bitterness. Strength." Ava's phone buzzed on the table. It was Zara. "We found something," the message read. "I need you in my office tonight." Hours later, Ava walked into Zara's law firm. Chloe was already there, her notebook open. Zara gestured toward the screen. "Logan's company isn't just failing, it's corrupt. He's been laundering money under charity names. We have proof. Ledgers, emails, transfer logs." Ava froze, her hand gripping the back of a chair. "He used my mother's foundation name." Finn nodded gravely. He thought no one would ever check in an active file. Mia added quietly, "We'll expose him, but it must be done legally. Once this goes public, it'll destroy him completely." Ava's voice trembled, but not with fear. "I don't want revenge. I just want truth. Let the world see who he really is." Zara met her gaze, steady and proud. "Then let's begin." Finn pulled out a folder marked confidential. "We'll send this to Judge Aaron Bell. Once she sees this, Logan's assets will be frozen within 48 hours. Chloe whispered. "He won't see it coming." Ava looked out the window at the city lights flickering through the rain. He never did. Across town in Logan's office, Serena laughed over champagne. "We did it, Logan. The investors are back." But outside their glass tower, a courier approached the security desk, holding a sealed court order stamped with the judge's crest. "Deliver immediately," he said. "Sir, the accounts are frozen." The shout echoed through the glass halls of Keller Dynamics. Logan stormed out of his office, his tie hanging loose, his phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean, frozen? That's impossible." His accountant stammered through the line. "Every asset, every transfer. There's a court order from Judge Aaron Bell. It's over, sir." Logan's face went pale. No, that's a mistake." He turned toward Serena, who stood near the window in a silk dress, pretending to stay calm. "Serena," he snapped, "you told me everything was covered. You said the transfers were clean." She flinched, eyes darting to the door. I did what you asked. I only moved what you signed off on." Logan grabbed the papers off his desk and slammed them down. You were supposed to protect me, not drag me into ruin. Before she could respond, the glass doors burst open. Two uniformed officers stepped in, led by Detective Leo Nash, a tall man with a composed but unyielding stare. Logan Keller, he announced, you're under investigation for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of charity funds. The room went silent. You can explain to Judge Aaron Bell. Court hearing tomorrow morning. As the officers escorted him out, flashes from reporters' cameras blinded him. Voices shouted questions. Mr. Keller, is it true you stole from your late wife's foundation? Did Serena Finch help you move the money offshore? Serena froze, eyes wide with terror. They're saying my name too. Detective Nash turned briefly. Yes, Miss Finch, you'll be questioned as well. Panic spread across her face. She stumbled backward, knocking over a vase. This can't be happening. Hours later, the city news exploded with headlines. Businessman Logan Keller arrested for charity fraud. Serena Finch under investigation. At her penthouse, Serena packed frantically when a knock came. It was Nathan Grant, the wealthy investor Julian Price had introduced to her weeks earlier. Nathan, she gasped, you said you'd help me. He smiled coldly. I said I'd use you, Serena, and I have. The contracts are under my name now. Enjoy your freedom. Well, at last, he turned and left as the sound of approaching sirens filled the night air. Meanwhile, at Ava's quiet home, Vivian turned up the volume on the television. Ava stood still as she saw Logan being led away in handcuffs, his once perfect suit soaked from the rain. Chloe whispered, "Justice moves fast when truth leads the way." Ava's eyes softened, but her heart didn't harden. "I don't hate him," she said quietly. "I just finally see him on the TV." Judge Aaron Bell appeared briefly, her stern face commanding respect. "Integrity," she said to reporters, "is the only wealth that lasts." Ava touched her silver bracelet. "Mom was right," she whispered. "Some storms clean everything they destroy." Thunder rolled again, but this time it sounded like applause. And far away, Logan sat alone in a police car, staring out into the dark street where a billboard glowed with his own company logo, now being torn down. He whispered, "Ava, order in the court." The gavel struck sharply as the courtroom erupted in murmurs. Logan Keller stood at the defendant's table, pale and trembling. Cameras lined the back of the hall. The world was watching. Judge Aaron Bell, stern and calm, adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Keller," she said firmly, "you are charged with embezzlement, fraud, and exploitation of charitable assets. Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Logan's voice cracked. "Your Honor, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I lost control. My wife," he hesitated, "my ex-wife, she left me and I fell apart." From the audience, Ava sat quietly beside Zara Vance and Chloe Flynn, her silver bracelet glinting under the courtroom lights. She didn't move, didn't blink. Logan turned toward her, his voice desperate. "Av, please tell them I'm not a monster. You know me better than anyone." The room went silent. Reporters leaned forward. Judge Bell looked up. "Mrs. Williams, you may speak if you wish." Zara whispered, "You don't have to." But Ava rose slowly, her calm presence commanding every eye in the room. She faced the man who once threw her out in the rain. "I knew you once, Logan," she said softly, "a man who smiled at sunrise and dreamed of better things. But then pride became your god and greed became your language." Logan's eyes filled. "I made mistakes," she nodded gently. "Yes, we all do. But you built your success on my mother's name, and you buried your conscience beside her grave." The gallery murmured. Even Serena, sitting in the back row, lowered her eyes in shame. Ava took a breath. "Your Honor, I don't wish for revenge. I only want justice, and for every stolen dollar to return to the causes it was meant for." Judge Bell nodded slowly, spoken like a woman of grace. Then her gavel struck again. "Logan Keller, this court sentences you to 12 years imprisonment and full restitution to the Eliza Legacy Fund." Logan broke from the witness stand, emotion crashing through his facade. He stumbled across the courtroom floor until he was standing before Ava. Then he fell to his knees. "Av, please," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Forgive me. I was blind. I was proud. I thought wealth made me powerful. But you," his words broke as he reached for her hand, "you were the only real thing I ever had." The courtroom fell silent. Even the reporters lowered their cameras. Ava looked down at him. The man who once made her beg for love, now trembling before her in shame. Her eyes filled not with anger, but with quiet understanding. She spoke softly. "Logan, forgiveness is free, but trust is earned. I forgive you, but I can never walk backward." He wept quietly, still on his knees, as Judge Bell's gavel struck once, sealing his sentence and his lesson. Ava turned toward the exit, the silver bracelet gleaming under the courtroom light, symbol of grace that outlived pain. The crowd gasped. Serena wept silently. Logan collapsed into his chair, whispering Ava's name as officers approached. Detective Leo Nash stepped forward, guiding Logan away with quiet authority. "Sometimes the hardest prison," he said softly, "is the one built inside our hearts." Ava watched as Logan was led out. There was no hatred in her eyes, only peace. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ava paused at the steps, the sun breaking through gray clouds. She spoke clearly. "Grief taught me patience. Betrayal taught me strength. And forgiveness taught me freedom. My mother's dream now lives through the Eliza Legacy Fund for grieving women." Cameras flashed. The crowd erupted in applause. Brenda Scott, the gossiping neighbor who once mocked her, wiped her eyes. "She really rose from it all," she whispered. Later that evening, Ava stood beside Vivian on the foundation's opening night. Children laughed, women smiled, and music filled the air. Ava touched the silver bracelet and whispered, "We made it, Mom." The lights reflected in her eyes, not tears, but victory. And far away in a dim prison cell, Logan stared through the bars, whispering to no one. She really did. Outside, thunder rolled once, distant, fading, as the world turned quietly toward a new dawn.